Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30, so I think I'd like to get started, if that's okay. Just looking here. Is Councillor Bodley? Well, I think that we'll just get started, if that's okay. So, good evening and welcome to the council meeting of Monday, February the 10th, 2025. And I'm just going to start with our territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we're broadcasting from, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Shinaanan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. I'd also like to recognize that it's Black History Month, which has been recognized in Canada since 1978, when advocates from the Ontario Black History Society emphasized the importance of this celebration for Canadians of all races. Almost 50 years of celebration of Black history and Black excellence are still underlined by the struggles that come with the Black experience. Black communities are still underrepresented in workplaces and decision-making structures, more negatively affected in health outcomes, lacking appropriate ongoing investments for entrepreneurs, and more. In communities across Canada and locally, we have also seen that racialized individuals face extreme backlash when they speak out against injustices. We all have a role in creating a city that brings an end to racial discrimination and to build a more inclusive community. This starts with the basics of how we relate to each other as humans. We must be aware of our individual prejudice and learn to treat each other with dignity, respect, and compassion. Learning about the experiences of others is an essential part of understanding how we can effectively join in the fight against all forms of racism and discrimination, including anti-Black racism. Throughout February, we encourage you to support local Black-owned businesses, read the work of Black writers, and connect with your community at one of the many events being hosted by local organizations. As a council, we reaffirm our acknowledgement to addressing anti-Black racism and rededicate ourselves to making the city of Waterloo a place where the contributions of Black community members are recognized and celebrated. I'd like to also take a moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we paused to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. And I'm just looking, council, for disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. I have one. It's with regard to item 8A, official plan amendment number 52 and zoning bylaw amendment Z2403 for 177 to 179 Albert Street, and that's related to my place of employment. Moving on, we have a presentation with regard to landmarks and landscapes. Jennifer Huber's here from the museum program and engagement associate. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jennifer Huber, and I am the engagement associate from the City of Waterloo Museum. Karen Vandenbrink, manager and curator of the museum, sends her regrets this evening as she has had a family incident. Next week, though, marks Heritage Week, a time to celebrate the rich history of what makes Waterloo so special. Our community stories are woven into the objects and the documents that we preserve. At the museum, our role is to share these powerful stories and bring them to life. Tonight, we've chosen to highlight a few of the many maps in our collection, a fascinating window into Waterloo's past. Maps are powerful storytellers for historians because they capture the physical, social, and economic landscape of a place at a particular moment in time. They reveal patterns of growth, industrialization, and urban planning, while shedding light on cultural shifts, land use, and political decisions. By comparing historical maps, historians can trace the evolution of communities, uncover forgotten histories, and understand past decisions and how they shape our present. Let's explore some of the stories hidden within these maps and find out what makes Waterloo so unique. This is one of Waterloo's earliest maps, the bird's eye view from the 1890s. And this is just when Waterloo had a population of just under 3,000 people. This map not only shows what the community looked like, but also what was envisioned for its future. You'll notice the multiple smokestacks marking the prominence of the manufacturing sector. If you can imagine, uptown Waterloo was dominated by furniture factories, farming implement manufacturers, and even cigar producers. A prominent manufacturer at the time is featured in the bottom left section, the Seagram's Distillery. Its multiple whiskey warehouses and large water reservoirs on Caroline Street provide a unique piece of our history. For hidden in those reservoirs were what some called the whiskey trout of Waterloo. Some rather infamous residents, you can imagine. As the Toronto Star recounts, some years ago, someone got the idea of dropping in a few trout, and the experiment was an instantaneous and complete success. They became as fierce as barracudas, as swift as swallows, and as numerous as applicants for a government-controlled job. Definitely a sight to see. Now, following up Herb Street towards King Street, you'll cross over a stream which used to run through uptown Waterloo, and you'll find our very first town hall. In the 1870s, this building was built for approximately $10,000. But it served more than just a meeting place for our government. It was a library, a market space, a performance hall to our community. Now, turning onto Albert Street, you'll see plans for Waterloo Park. The idea of a community park in the city center was new at this time, and making nature a part of urban areas was just beginning to spread across the country. Our Waterloo Park was originally named West Side Park because it was located on the west side of King Street. It officially opened in 1893, and the small ring of trees in that top left corner outline a track, which was a popular feature for people at that time. Today, this is where you'll find the cricket fields. Located in the bottom of the map now is another location that was once considered for Waterloo Park's location. Outlined again in a ring of trees, this land was Waterloo's fairgrounds. Although not selected for a park, this would later become Waterloo's third school, Alexandra Public School. To the right of the fairgrounds, you'll follow William Street to where it crosses Queen Street, or what today you know as Regina Street. In the 1950s, Waterloo's Queen Street was renamed Regina, which is Latin for Queen, to prevent confusion with Kitchener's Queen Street. Today, that's where we are. The map also highlights the edges of town in the 1890s. Central Street to the north, Park Street to the south, and Willow Street to the east. And at this time, Waterloo was still separate from Kitchener along King Street, although they were slowly creeping closer and closer together. Now I would like to fast forward a little bit, 90 years to the 1980s. This is an aerial view of Waterloo in the 1980s, showing a rapidly growing city. During this decade, Waterloo's population surged by more than 30%, far exceeding the province-wide growth rate of 4.2%. Fueled by expanding universities, insurance companies, and other stable industries, Waterloo's population swelled to 53,000. Growth was visible in nearly every ward in Waterloo. New neighborhoods such as Beechwood, University Downs, or Lexington, and Westvale were just beginning, while the more established ones continued to expand and grow. Westvale, in Ward 1, was developed from 120 acres of farmland into homes for 5,000 residents. It was announced as Waterloo's first environmentally friendly subdivision. It incorporated things like tree preservation and water permeation measures. The construction site visible on this map in the top left corner stands out against the farmland. This area would become Beechwood West, or Upper Beechwood in Waterloo, Ward 1. Following along the top of the map, you'll cross over Columbia Lake and head to the University of Waterloo. They were expanding their programs during this time, and they were producing somewhere around 1/3 of Canada's computer scientists or science graduates. Moving to the bottom right corner, you'll enter into Uptown Waterloo. At this time, City Hall was located in the Marsland Center, which you see located on your map there. Interestingly enough, this is the exact same location Town Hall was on the previous map in the 1890s, just a different building. Also, the stream which ran through Uptown Waterloo in the previous map is now covered. Beginning in the 1960s and expanding in the 1980s, Waterloo buried the stream in underground culverts to allow for urbanization to flourish. Today, you can see the stream enter the culvert by the grist mill and re-emerge next to City Center. To the left, you'll see a cluster of buildings, the Seagram's Distillery again. In the 1980s, 2 large red brick buildings hid the historic yellow brick barrel warehouses we're so familiar with today. Now, these architecturally striking yellow brick buildings from the 1800s are no longer hidden, but rather serve as the backdrop to Uptown Waterloo. Now, let's take a look at maps in a different way through our current exhibition. Maps incorporating Indigenous perspectives and traditional knowledge challenge our existing colonial narratives. They provide us with deeper insight into the significance of the land far beyond recent developments. Our current exhibit at the City of Waterloo Museum is Indigenous curated content with 3 partners: the Legacy of Hope Foundation, Mohawk graphic artist Dakota Brandt, and Protect the Track. This is an exquisite map of the Haldimand Tract, created by Be the Tract, which is an initiative of Protect the Tract. It was created by 4 beading artists: Tisha Amerthel, Dr. Taylene Atfield, Shahio Win Anshon Phillips, and Jajija Guas Jacobs. Created on traditionally tanned hide with raised white beadwork on a stunning purple velvet background. It depicts the Haldimand Tract, the land granted to the Haudenosaunee. The purple and white colors, the colors used in wampum, symbolize the original agreement between 6 nations in Canada. In the center, you will see the Grand River represented. In the words of the artist, the Grand River, a vital water source of the tract, flows through the piece as a central stem from which all flowers grow. The tributaries extend beyond the edges of the map, representing the broader Grand River watershed. Birds, animals, and flowers illustrate our shared responsibility for land stewardship and the deep connections Indigenous communities have maintained with the land. It's an incredibly moving piece, and I invite all of you to reflect on our relationship with the land and our responsibilities to its care. I encourage you to take some time to visit and explore that impact. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a glimpse into our community's past. By weaving together the historical maps, Indigenous perspectives, and community art projects like that of Protect the Track, we gain a richer understanding of Waterloo's evolution. These visual records challenge us to consider whose stories have been told, whose have been silenced, and how can we foster a more inclusive history. I invite all of you to visit our current exhibit, which explores the impact of residential school system and the 60 Scoop, both nationally and locally. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Jennifer. It was really, really interesting, and I liked the way that you walked us through the various maps and the changing landscape over the years. Any questions, Council? Seeing none. Thank you again, and I appreciate you stepping in at the last minute. Next is item 7A, staff reports for the Housing Accelerator Fund Sugarbush South Corridor Expansion Initiative. And it's a planning framework and recommendations, and with a presentation or some introductory remarks, I should say, is Tanya Couric. Welcome.
Good evening, Council, and good evening to everyone attending in person and online. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to present the report that you have before you and provide some introductory remarks. The report that you have before you pertains to Housing Accelerated Fund Grant Initiative 3, which looks to enable missing middle medium rise development in the Sugarbush South neighborhood. And since our report last year, in the middle of last year, as staff, we have undertaken engagement with the community, various agencies, various departmental staff, as well as other interested parties. What we are looking for as part of Phase 2 is to get direction from Council to move forward with retaining a consultant to undertake a land use planning framework, which would involve an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to enable medium-rise build form in the neighborhood. That's it as an overview, but I'm very happy to answer any questions or receive any comments that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for this report and for the work that you've put into this over the last year, at least the last year. I just wanted to ask if you could expand a little bit for me about the consultant and their role in the parkland acquisition, or expanding some green space in that area.
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe, that's a great question. So typically when it comes to parkland acquisition, that is something under the purview of city staff. In terms of, the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment that the consultant is being asked to advance. It's going to more focus on, the provisions and policies. But we very much heard from yourself as well as from the community the importance of acquiring parkland in order to support intensification, not just in Sugarbush South, but in the larger Sugarbush neighborhood. So we've heard that, and what we will be looking to do as part of a future capital budgeting project is to be advancing a capital project sheet specifically to acquire parkland. And so in terms of the actual identification in parkland and all that, that's something that the Parks Department will be looking at, and we have conveyed information in that regard. Oftentimes when it comes to parkland acquisition, it really comes down to opportunities that present themselves. But all goes to say is we've heard the need, and going forward, that's something that we will be exploring in terms of city staff.
Excellent, thanks so much.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm excited to see this come forward, and I think all of Council, having been through a number of different applications that have come up for Northdale, we're conscious of the constraints that happen when we start to intensify within a neighborhood. And given that, and I noted several examples of prioritizing the environment in this expansion initiative planning document, I'm just wondering, like in other parts of the city, we've created trails and green corridors, the Laurel Greenway being one that connects Waterloo Park to other green spaces throughout Waterloo. Is there room to, as you were saying, as opportunities arise, connect Sugarbush itself to other parklands in the Sugarbush community? And I ask that just because so often our green spaces get islanded, and creating those important green corridors is something that actually makes neighborhoods feel like the nature aspect of a neighborhood more accessible to its residents. It creates bio zones for all the little creatures and the flora and fauna that, things are connected rather than being islanded. So I'm just wondering if a strategy like this in some way does present those options.
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, it's definitely something that we can take into consideration. I do know that our Transportation Services Department, as part of our agency and staff review, have identified the need, as has the community, to help facilitate walkways for the very reasons you have identified. And we have been quite successful in Northdale in achieving those walkways in order to facilitate movement, accessibility, also to support active transportation, noting that this neighborhood is in close proximity to 2 LRT stations. So definitely something that will be considered, and as part of the future official plan amendment, that will likely include a map identifying where we are hoping to help facilitate and get walkways as redevelopment applications come forward.
Other questions, council? Seeing none, there is a direction here and a recommendation. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you so much.
We're on to item 7B, purchase of Labrador Drive Extension and Campus Drive to establish a new municipal highway forming part of the municipal highway system. It's prepared by Christina. Christina, did you have any remarks on this report before we hear it? Okay. There's a recommendation here, council. Was there any questions? Seeing none, is there a recommendation? Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We're on to item 8A, official plan amendment number 52. And this is where I will recuse myself and wish you all a good evening.
Good evening. Mayor McCabe, members of council, city staff, and members of our community.
Just one second, if you will. I just need to read the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just
I'm
need
too
to
excited
read
here, I guess.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, Max. I know you're excited. I just needed a second to kind of get myself sorted here. Okay, so we are on, is it item 8A? And this is an informal public meeting to consider item 8A, official plan amendment number 52 and zoning bylaw amendment Z 24-03 146882110 Canada Inc. 177 to 179 Albert Street. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future time. All property owners within 110 meters of the subject lands and anyone who signs the registry will receive notice of the formal public meeting. Anyone who wants further notification of this application, including the formal public meeting and passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate registry located at the desk at the rear of the council chambers. If there is more than one registry, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one. The planner, Max Kerrigan, will now provide a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Max.
Thank you. Thank you again, everyone present tonight and those tuning in online. My name is Max Kerrigan. I'll be presenting tonight's informal public meeting for a zoning bylaw and official plan amendment for the property at 177 and 179 Albert Street. The application was submitted by a numbered company represented here tonight by Pierre Chauvin of MHBC, Rima Masri of Masri O Architects, and Parker Zhang of the Owners Group, who will be presenting following my presentation. The subject lands are located on the northwest corner of Albert Street and Seagram Drive, just a block south of University Avenue West, and immediately west of the main Wilfrid Laurier University campus. Looking north, you can see that the site's occupied by, well, you can sort of see that the site's occupied by two existing residential, 20th century residential buildings, one of which is operating a commercial business, and the other continues to be a residence, from what I understand. Looking south, you can see that the site abuts a property that's currently vacant, that's owned by Wilfrid Laurier University, and operates as a pedestrian link to lands to the west. Looking eastward towards Albert Street on Seagram Drive, you can see that the site abuts an existing 3-story student residential building and is immediately north of the Albert McGregor Heritage Conservation District, which is on the right. Now, just zooming out a little bit, I wanted to highlight a couple things of interest. You can see north of the subject lands in blue is the Northdale neighborhood, rapidly changing neighborhood, as we all know. The yellow is the Wilfrid Laurier campus and other Wilfrid Laurier-owned lands, and the green is Waterloo Park to the south. Also important to note is the ion line running across Seagram Drive with the Waterloo Park station within a 10-minute walk of the subject lands. And there, immediately south in the red is the McGregor Albert Heritage Conservation District. Excuse me. Now, the proposal in front of us today is introducing a 24-story tower upon a 6-story podium, equaling a total of 30 stories. The proposal contemplates 230 units delivered in a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom configurations. The applicant's also proposing to provide 4% of those units as affordable. Additionally, a commercial use is proposed at grade, and 45 parking spaces and 281 bicycle parking spaces are proposed. With respect to the planning framework, the official plan designates the property as a mixed-use, high-density residential, which is shown in brown, which permits, as of right, 25 stories in height. The lands are also within a major corridor, as well as within the Waterloo Park Station area. Mixed-use designation, mixed-use high-density designation, major corridors, and station areas all contemplate multi-unit residential buildings as the predominant use of land and intend to provide opportunities for substantial levels of intensification. The property is also situated immediately west of Laurier, as seen in gray, and again, the McGregor Albert Heritage Conservation District, which generally follows the lands shown in yellow. Additionally, it should be noted that the recently adopted official plan update permits heights of 30 stories as of right within protected major station areas. Lastly, the specific area 20, as noted, 20I, applies to the lands, which is simply a special policy that allows for university residences and ancillary academic uses, in addition to the permissions of the residential designation. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the lands are zoned mixed-use residential 81, as shown in orange. Mixed-use residential 81 permits a maximum height of 25 stories and a density of 750 bedrooms per hectare. Also, in similar fashion to the specific provision area in the OP, there's a site-specific exemption, C179, which adds university and college and ancillary uses as permitted. In terms of the request submitted, in order to develop as per their plans, the applicant is requesting an official plan amendment to permit a maximum height of 30 stories and a maximum density of 2,511 bedrooms per hectare. This is equivalent to 370 bedrooms across 230 units. The requested site-specific provisions to the zoning bylaw include increasing the maximum density and maximum height, a reduction in the minimum required landscape open space, a reduction in the minimum required tower separation distance from the northerly and westerly internal lot lines, a reduced step back above the podium in a couple locations, and reduced setbacks on 3 of the 4 sides of the building. Just showing a plan to give a little idea of what that would mean. The proposed tower location centered to the site in the darkest orange color, sitting upon a podium that protrudes to different depths around the tower. And there's a proposed landscape boulevard extending along both frontages of Albert and Seagram. Important to note is the proposed tower is 436 meters square, which is less than half the maximum permitted tower floor plate size, where we permit 1,000 meters squared, making it one of, if not the narrowest, proposed towers in Waterloo. In terms of submitted studies and plans, the applicant submitted various plans, reports, and studies as part of the application, which have been circulated to internal staff and review agencies. This information has also been posted online at Engage WR, and we continue to review. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned, we continue to review the submitted reports and plans. We will consider any feedback previously received, as well as any new feedback following this meeting from commenting agencies, the public, city staff, and council. I will then assess, as the assigned planner, whether the requested amendments and site-specific zoning provisions constitute good planning, after which I will author a staff report to be prepared with a recommendation to council. A formal public meeting will then take place at a future date to be determined, at which point council will make a final decision on the proposed zoning bylaw and official plan amendment request. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Max. I appreciate the presentation. Council, do you have questions for staff? Go ahead, Councillor Wadley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. Could you go back to the map near the beginning that highlighted the that one, the yellow property there? So I understand that yellow property is not a part of the discussion here this evening, but I'm just looking for clarification. That property is owned by the university, and it is potentially going to be residential properties as well. And I wanted to confirm with you that although we would have official plan designations and planning principles in place for that property, the university is now exempt from following our official plan. I'm just looking for some clarification on that for this adjacent property.
Through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Bodley, that is correct. My understanding is they are now exempt and can proceed straight to building permit, and they can submit for site plan application as a courtesy if they choose.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Max. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the McGregor-Albert Heritage District, which is relatively close to this development proposal. And if there are any impact considerations, like I'm wondering about transition heights, or, I mean, I know that this is ion related as well, and that it is already 25 stories, but I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about impacts there.
Through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Rowe, certainly. I don't know how in-depth I can speak to the specifics of the Heritage Conservation District, but certainly through my review, when I do a more fulsome review of all the submitted materials, I'll be looking for consideration of shadow impacts, wind impacts, and then certainly policies we have in place with respect to transition and how the building's been designed to consider those things, setbacks at grade, podium, step backs, that sort of thing. Those will all come into play as I review to determine whether or not this is a suitably designed building for this location.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, just those considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Mr. Kerrigan, I'm hoping you can help us understand a little bit about why these two zonings are adjacent to each other without some sort of buffer. We go straight from the Heritage Conservation District to a much higher density, higher built form. And the only thing separating that is a street. Normally we have a block that is more of a buffer, like a step down. And I'm curious why we ended up with this extreme juxtaposition.
through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Wright. I'm just going to switch to the zoning map, since that was more of a generalized, well, it does follow the property lines to the best of my tracing abilities, but let me just go to the zoning map. So to your point, there is low-rise residential in the light yellow. The transition, certainly in other places across the city, there is sort of an intermediate sort of stepping. In this one, yeah, it clearly is more severe. I wasn't part of the crew of planners who determined that would be the line. I'm sure I can follow up and determine why that line was drawn in such a way. But I can't speak to the steps
rationale, yeah.
or the rationale for
Okay.
why that's the case.
Thanks for that. I would be just interested in knowing the history on that, so we can follow up on that later. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions from council? Okay, seeing none, thanks very much, Max.
Thank you.
I'll now ask any registered delegations to come forward. And we have Pierre Chauvin, partner with MHBC Planning. And there's also Rima Masri and Parker Zhang. Are you speaking collectively or dividing your time? Okay.
I'll ask for the owner, Parker, to speak first. I'll speak secondly, and then Rima will clean up.
Okay. However you'd like to divide your 10 minutes, that's fine with us. Welcome, Parker.
Okay, I just need 1 minute. So,
Okay.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Parker. It's my honor to be here representing the ownership group of this project. In the past 10 years, we have built 2 apartments in Waterloo. 2 apartments are under construction right now. And then we also have 3 towers that's down the road in the next couple of years that we're going to apply. And we also have a steel stock factory that's located in Waterloo. So we know how important for Waterloo to provide enough housing, especially the purpose-built rental apartments for this community. And down the road, in all of our future projects, including this one, we will always consider energy efficiency, more bicycle parking, and affordable housing in our projects. And thank you everyone at City of Waterloo to make this happen. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Parker. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Again, just for introductions, my name is not Trevor Hawkins, who was originally on your agenda. My name is Pierre Chauvin. I am his partner at MHBC Planning, and I'll be taking over this file going forward. I do have a brief slide presentation. I do want to thank and acknowledge Max's wonderful presentation. He gave great context to the location and some of the challenges with this very small site, as you can appreciate. You'll notice on this first slide are some renderings that are relatively new, and we've provided these to staff recently. They look a little different, quite a bit different than what Mr. Kerrigan presented in his presentation, and I'll be speaking to these later, as well as Rima, the architect behind, the brains behind this wonderful design. I'll just go to the next slide again. Just from a contextual standpoint, and Max spoke to this already a little bit, the real little red dot in the center of the image is the property. The concentric circles around it represent a 5-minute and 10-minute walk. These lands are within the Laurier Waterloo Park major transit station area. As you can see, as Max indicated, we're just south of the Northdale community. We're adjacent to the Laurier campus. We're within walking distance to the University of Waterloo campus, and walking distance to Waterloo Park, as well as the Memorial Recreation Complex. A number of schools, commercial, the LRT, transit, etc. So very well located in terms of proposed intensification, and hence why these lands are always identified in terms of density within your official plan and zoning. In terms of an overview of the development, as Max indicated, this is the same slide he had with the beige tone representing the point tower of the 30-story building. The podium is represented, and part of the podium is also parking structure, which is coming out of the ground somewhat, is represented by the lighter tan. The landscape areas are areas along Seagram and Albert Street. For orientation purposes, I'll say the north, top of the image is north. Albert is on the, I'll call it the right-hand side, and which is east, and Seagram is south, and the other property frontage is west. It's a 30-story building. I would note that under OPA 58, if we waited a little while longer until the province approves OPA 58, we wouldn't be requiring an official plan amendment at all. As you know, the OPA 58 permits 30 stories as of right, and this is consistent with that direction that Council has recently adopted. There's a mix of 1, 2, and even 3-bedroom units in this development, totaling 230 units. I would say from a unit split perspective, 41% of the units are 1-bedroom, a large proportion, 57%, are 2-bedroom, and about 2% are 3-bedroom units. Affordable housing is being contemplated here. We're looking at a 4%, about 9 units being truly affordable units. Our client is also looking into CMHC financing, which, as you know, some of the financing requirements require up to 10% affordable housing. Now, that affordable housing definition is somewhat different and probably at a higher price point. And so our client is looking at how that may be in addition to that 4%. But at minimum, we will be looking at a 4% affordable housing, which is even higher than if inclusionary zoning were applied here, which, as you know, has been deferred, would be higher than what the inclusionary zoning bylaw would permit. Also provided for is ground floor commercial to activate the Seagram and Albert frontages. There is also structured parking, up to 45 spaces. I know that doesn't seem like a lot for the 230 units. This is intended to be rental units. It would anticipate, although not geared towards students, but we anticipate the majority of the housing would be geared towards the students. And also note that parking is not required within major transit station areas, which we are within. As you'll note, we have extensive landscaping along the frontages of Albert and Seagram to provide, again, for a comfortable street frontage and deal with some of that transition that I heard somebody ask with respect to the Heritage District. We are also contending with some road widenings along Seagram and Albert, and that has reduced, in fact, the area that we have to work within, and has forced us to push the building further away from the intersection, and as a result has created some of the additional setback reductions, tower setbacks, and that we are looking for. It is a very compact and efficient tower, as you've heard, probably one of the slenderest towers you'll have in the city, but it works, and it's quite efficient development for the size of the property. Again, here's just the rendering of that podium. You can see a lot of articulation, height variation in the podium. Colors are a little more gray tones, muted to blend with the surrounding neighborhood. There's a lot of punch-outs and balconies in the podium, adding to that variety and articulation. You'll see the access. This is looking from the corner. So Seagram will be on the left-hand side. We're on Albert Street. You'll see how there is a bit of a grade change going down Seagram, where one of the entrances to the underground parking area is. There's also an entrance off of Albert as well for loading, unloading, whatnot. And the main floor is predominantly sort of entrance, main lobby, and as well as a commercial space. I should have noted that commercial space is over about 2,400 square feet in area. Here are some images of just the 30-story after that podium. You can see this effectively that the 30 stories projects straight up. And as you've heard already, the existing bylaw and an official plan already permits, as of right, 25 stories. What we're proposing is 30 stories. One of the last slides here is just a summary. I won't go into detail with a lot of the requests that we're asking for, but because Max has gone through those. But we are maintaining the existing RMU 81 zoning that's currently in place. We're simply asking for some amendments to some of those regulations related to the height, again, which is consistent with your official plan amendment. We are requesting a max density in beds, bedrooms per hectare, and as you note, through the official plan amendment, OPA 58, the density of beds has been directed towards, is no longer in the official plan, is directed towards the zoning bylaw. And so in effect, we are recommending, proposing a 2,511 bedrooms per hectare. As I've noted earlier, there's also a request to provide for a minimum of 4% of affordable housing, a slight reduction in minimum landscapes, open space, 30% is the requirement, we're at 24%. There are some minor tower separation reductions. You can see on the north side or the top of the image, it's 6.5 meters, and on the left-hand side or the westerly property line is 9 meters. 11 meters is the tower separation requirement. So we are requesting amendments to those particular tower separation requirements. There is, because of the road widening along Seagram Road, we are requesting a reduction in the Seagram setback, which is typically 5 meters. And then there's also some...
You have 30 seconds left. Apologies, I missed the 1 minute mark.
Okay, and I'll just move on to our conclusions, and here to say that in our summation and view, this is consistent with your provincial planning statement, conforms with the regional official plan, certainly conforms with the city's new official plan as amended by OPA 58, and it achieves a number of city objectives, including affordable housing, intensification within an MTSA, and active street frontages, including ground floor commercial uses. This will provide for family-sized units within an MTSA and provide for much-needed housing, which, as we all know, we need, particularly within close to transit and in proximity to a number of amenities. So I'll leave it there and certainly be open to answer any questions if Rima has time to speak.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pierre. So, Council, are there questions of the delegate? Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe. I will correct slightly. You noted that we had deferred inclusionary zoning, which we have not at this time done at the City of Waterloo. But that leads me to my question, which is maybe I'm hoping you might be able to speak to what the motivations are for including the 4% of affordable housing, how you came to that number, and frankly, my question is how were you able to get it to pencil when it's not a requirement?
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. How we arrived or came to 4% is really something that, in terms of our ask, we obviously know that we're asking for higher density, and we realize community benefits are not something that can be requested, but it's something that, as a added bonus, I shrug to use that word, but it's something as certainly added benefit to provide this intensification. We want to ensure that we're providing something for all segments of the market, and that includes, not only market rate rental, but also affordable, deeply affordable rental as well.
Thank you. Did you want to add something, Rima?
I just want to add that modern real estate development, they are passionate about giving back to the community. So they had the idea of providing affordable housing even before the inclusionary zoning coming into effect. And the reason how, I don't know exactly about the economic analysis, but they are in a strong financial position that's somewhat unique, especially during this time, so they can manage to make it happen. Obviously, the density helps, but I think predominantly they're offering it because they feel that it's a good thing to do. The density is permitted because of the provincial regulations, but there is also an acknowledgement that because it's a tight site, and as much as we try to squeeze the building, we're still asking quite a lot in terms of setbacks. So it helps to offset that ask from the community in another way as well.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor? No? Okay. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Councillor Bodley actually asked my question about affordable housing, but I'm just curious, I know times are different now and that affordable housing is certainly something that's top of mind, but I'm just wondering if in your past buildings or the ones that you're building now, if there's any affordable housing.
Parker, you want to?
So for the two construction that's under construction right now, one is at 316 Batavia and one is at 80 Hickory Street, and those are each have 10% affordable housing in the projects. But it's relatively a smaller building, 6-story, so each has about 10 units.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Did you have a follow-up? No? Okay. Other questions from council? Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And so I will now ask if there's anyone else present tonight who wishes to speak to this application.
Yes, I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, thank you. You can come forward and provide your name and your municipality of residence, not your full address. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for allowing us, community, to speak to proposed developments just like this one. Council attendees, friends and neighbors. I live about 2 blocks from this location. I was very privileged to also have lived 4 buildings from here just before then, my son and I, our family. We heard at the start of council meeting today a bit of a history lesson of our region, our city, and how heritage and history is important. We've seen a lot of change since those early slides about the changes that have come to Waterloo. But this is important, I think, for this specific reason at 177, 179 Albert Street. Albert Street is historically a 2-lane, very narrow road where single-family homes are on the property that we're talking about. These are 2 or 2.5-story buildings. What's being proposed here is throwing away the benefit of planning, good planning. I'm grateful for the good decisions our city's made over the years. It's helped make the MACA community. I was a former co-chair of our neighborhood association. I'm here to speak to this on my own. There are friends who are not feeling well, who would like to be here today, but they've shared their opinions with me and several of us on this particular property, because I'll use some of the words that I've heard today. Severe changes to the neighborhood. It's a stark and dramatic increase in the usage rate. We're talking about 200 to 300 times its current usage rate. Anyone who's ever walked, biked, or driven up Albert Street knows that traffic is already a problem, and it's been a growing problem. We've got the luxury and the opportunity here to approve or to not approve an official plan amendment. And I'm sharing my strong opinion for 10 technical reasons why I strongly encourage our good council to say no to official plan amendment number 52. There was an earlier proposal made on this property. We shared very detailed, very specific responses to this as a neighborhood and community, and I put my name on it. Not only does it seem that each and every single one of those suggestions not only was ignored, but then the current proposal has gone actually the opposite direction, increasing their request further. We note that the property was sold to the folks who sold it to the current owner by the Martin Luther University College. Talk about history and the relevance of this to me and my passion for my city and my neighborhood and why I love living nearby. At one point, both of my grandparents were 25% of the arts faculty that became Wilfrid Laurier University today. My family lived on one block away from Laurier on Hickory Street. We could go to Max's map if that's helpful to folks. And my father's family lived on the other side of Clayfield, the little street that connects Bricker and Ezra. The use of this property and its proposal to be efficient, and sometimes I've been accused of not being efficient in my language, but I feel that this proposal is both...
Speaking of efficiencies, you have 1 minute left.
1 minute? Perfect, thank you, Your Honor. This proposal is inappropriate, and it's borderline absurd. Planning is a terrific vocation. There's value in planning. And this proposal, the top 10 reasons why it's inappropriate, because if you remember the photos that Max had shared with us earlier, if you look at the southward side of Albert Street, there are 2 family homes. There's our friends at Lucinda House, the Indigenous Community Center for Laurier, and single family homes where both old and young families, individuals, and a lot of students also share that community. We as a community do not support this proposal. It is inappropriate and absurd. I'll summarize. The parking and traffic is currently a problem already, and this proposal makes it worse. The garbage issues makes it worse. There's enhanced risk to groundwater. It's not been addressed by
Your
this.
time's expired, Rob, but
Okay.
if you can just wrap up quickly.
Thank you. Safety risks, diminishing the adjacent heritage neighborhood, that the folks who had done the good job at the time to define the Maca neighborhood as largely being a heritage neighborhood, we missed 10 or 11 houses from this current proposed property right to University Avenue. And I do want to avoid the mistakes of the past. The wind tunnel effects, the shadow shade plan will cast a shadow from that location to the recreation center swimming pool at King and University, and will cross from its current location, the shadow line, beyond Clayfield onto Bricker and Ezra Street. So the first commercial outdoor patio, I also feel, is against our neighborhood's wishes. All 10 of these reasons have been submitted through the Engage Waterloo portal, and I'm grateful to have your attention, and I ask for your consideration to please say no to number 52, the OPA.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
As you know, as I stated at the beginning, there's no decisions being made tonight. This is the first time that council has seen this proposal. So are there any questions of the delegate? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Rob. I'm wondering if the neighborhood, through you, isn't comfortable with this, what is the neighborhood, what is the neighborhood looking for?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's maybe the most important one. What the community would like, and we're not against development. We're in favor of good development and good plans. We know that we'd like better housing and more of it. We generally feel that, along with Martin Luther University, that sold the property to the folks that sold it to the current owner, had envisioned 8 to 10 stories, approximately the same height as the current Laurier Library that's across the street. The tallest buildings near this location are 6 to 8 stories, and they're pretty tall. But that's what the neighborhood was hoping for. It's what the former Laurier University, Martin Luther University, sold it, was under the belief that how it would be developed would be to an 8 to 12 story standard. I believe we could live with something like that, but I will point out there's an opportunity to make this even better for the current owners even. The university owns the adjacent properties, and they're willing to work with a responsible developer to make better use of the adjacent lands. So instead of going tall, we recommend perhaps considering the nearby properties as well, so the same number of units perhaps could be achieved, but with better site plan design and not nearly as tall and the problems that come with it. So about 8 to 12 stories. Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the delegate? Seeing none, thanks, Rob, for your time. Are there
Thank
any
you.
other anyone else present tonight who wishes to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none. If there are no more delegates, delegations, this informal public meeting has now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, there's a consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There are none, but there is a notice of motion that was provided by me. This is a motion that I've tabled regarding the proposed U.S. tariffs. It's to be discussed on February 24th, but I don't know if anyone had any questions right now, but we can leave those until February 24th. I would just say that certainly I'm happy to see that the municipalities across Waterloo Region, including Chair Redmond and the other heads of council and CAOs, are coming together to develop a sector-by-sector Waterloo Region response to these proposed tariffs, the ones that were proposed last night and the ones that were proposed and then tabled for 30 days. We're obviously very concerned about these. We're taking this threat very seriously. We'll be coming together with our economic development leaders across Waterloo and Waterloo Region to develop a strategy to support the local businesses here, to support the city's response. And certainly we know that there's a lot of U.S. businesses that are already based in Waterloo and Waterloo Region, and we want to, say to them that we've welcomed them for years. We continue to welcome them, and we want to work with them through this process. And we certainly know that we have a lot of residents who are either dual citizens of the U.S. and Canada, or have come here on for various work or study purposes, and we certainly support them being in our community. But we do, as I said, take this threat very seriously, and we are very much aligned with what Premier Ford and the premiers across the provinces and territories and Prime Minister Trudeau are doing to protect Canada and to protect our sovereignty, certainly. And we will have more to discuss on February 24th, and then also potentially by that point we'll have an update on the economic strategy that we'll be looking into with Waterloo Economic Development and Best WR. So thank you very much. On that point, so moving along, there's no correspondence or communications, no unfinished business. Council, are there questions? Nope, seeing none. Okay. Is there new business? Anyone have any new business, Council? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to give a shout out to a couple of the home associations and neighborhood associations in Ward 1. Beginning of February, and with the assistance of the cash grant from the city, the Beechwood home associations were able to hold their first ever festival winter festival at Regency Park, and over 250 people dropped by and saw it. They had curling outside, which was quite interesting for me, and the weather cooperated, so it was perfect. It was a really good initiative, and it just shows what good ideas and a little bit of support from the city can do. It goes a long way. This past weekend, Westvale held their second annual skate at Albert McCormick. So using facilities to get the residents to come out, and they too had quite a number of people come. So thank you to the staff at AMC who helped make the event a very successful event.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. And yeah, I was able to go to the Beechwood. Yeah, it was fantastic. Really great turnout, lots of good volunteers and some sponsorships, and thanks to staff who, with those mini grants that supported this initiative, it really was tremendous. Councillor Vasek. Okay.
Thanks, through you, Mayor. I have three things. One is just a reminder that there's 3 nights left of Skate Night, Date Night. This week it's dubstep and dance halls. Excellent. Country, and then TBD theme, and that means that after that it is spring, which is March, almost spring. So just a reminder that thank you, Create Waterloo, for making it happen, and King Kadim for DJing, and Hissing Goose?
Hissing Goose, Hissing Goose coffee.
Yeah, for the free apple ciders and hot chocolate, which I think the city pays for. And also, I went to see Beyonce and the Mothers twice, which is a play written and directed by Tennille Warren and produced by Greenlight Arts. And both nights I was there, I know the mayor and Councillor Bodley were there, but there was also city staff there, and the city got a bit of a shout out for some financial support they provided. So it was just wonderful the play was excellent. And it was also really lovely to see the support in different ways from the City of Waterloo staff and council. And then KWAG, one of our key cultural institutions, had an exhibition opening, an artist talk by Miles Rufelds and a friend of his, I've lost her name here, Angel Carter. And it was a talk about late stage capitalism and the alienation that brings. And he talked about, the conversation was pretty wild, and it went deep into conspiracy theories, which I have not read as deeply as they have about. But the one concept that I thought was really relevant to us at the city was the idea of cognitive mapping, which is the idea that people map themselves into the places they are. So they find in their own minds where they fit. And when they don't fit, they find places to fit. And often those places are not great places. And so it just really hammered home how imperative it is that we make this city and this region a place where people can map themselves cognitively as a tool to prevent alienation.
Fascinating. Thank you, Councillor Bassick, for that. And yeah, I did also get the chance to see Beyonce and the Monsters, and it was absolutely excellent. And what did I say? Oh, sorry. And the Mothers. Sorry. That's a different play. That's what my kids would write. But sorry, Beyonce and the Mothers. Tennille Warren's obviously a very talented individual in the community. Councillor Wright.
As a mother, I fully identify with that Freudian slip. Monster really does fit.
A monster mother, maybe. Just going to acknowledge the Uptown neighborhoods that came together with our neighborhoods team to run active bystander training, and it was deeply, deeply appreciated. It was held at the rec center on last Wednesday? I don't know, one of those days. It's all a blur now. But it was really well attended, and it was really just deeply gratifying to see neighborhood leadership coming together to figure out how to make Waterloo a more welcoming place and to really challenge hateful expressions that have been happening on a really regular basis. So just deep gratitude to those teams who came together to make that happen.
Thank you, Councillor Wright, and thank you. Yeah, that's important work to do, and we are often asked, steps the city's taking to address hate and hateful comments and actions, and that's a really important one. So thanks to staff for developing that. Anything else from council? Just because Councillor Roach is not here, I will give a shout out to Councillor Roach and some of the staff who helped Councillor Roach and I host a Ward 3 community community conversation on Saturday. It was excellent. It was well attended. People came with really good questions. We were able to talk about a variety of things, from some of the developments in the area to some of the upgrades that people are interested in at the Albert McCormick Community Center. And want to give a quick shout out to a couple of some of the younger members of our community, in particular Riley, who came not from Ward 3 but from another ward, to share ask me her questions, particularly around sidewalks and accessibility. I really appreciated it. She's I think grade 5 or 6. So if you're listening, Riley, and I know you're not, but I really appreciated the opportunity to meet you, and a couple of the other youngsters that came out. It was really great to see them, and to the rest of the community who came out. So with that, any new business? Sorry, we're just doing new business. Any enactment of the bylaws? Looking for a mover, Councillor Bodley, and a seconder, Councillor Rowe. All in favor, that is carried. And looking for someone to move the adjournment, Councillor Bassick. moved by Councillor Basak, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor, that is carried. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the evening, everyone.